everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. We are so excited today to be introducing a new series that we're going to be doing once a month here on the podcast. We are excited to have your feedback. Let us know what you think. But we are going to be talking books once a month. We're going to be doing romance reading. And I'm very excited about it because I need more reading in my life. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Bree's here to help me through this process.
Yes, I'm so excited to be with you during this process.
Yeah, so you have your Instagram where you talk about romance novels. And so, of course, that's why I thought to have you on this new show. So tell us how you got started in particularly reading romance novels and what you love about them.
I love kind of with romance. I think it catches a lot of slack because you know how it's going to end, right? You know you're going to get that happy ever after, but I think that there's something really comforting in that, and you're just going along for the ride. Different authors, you want to see what their spin on it's going to be, the journey that they're going to take you on, and then lead you to that happy ever after. And I actually started reading romance because of Hallmark. I was watching a Hallmark movie and I watched the Christmas movies every year. And I was like, I've never actually read a romance novel. And if you pay attention, a lot of especially like the older movies, they will tell you the novel that they were based on. And I'm like, why have I never actually read a romance? So that inspired me to pick up a romance novel. And that was like 2017. And I've been reading it ever since.
And have you always been a pretty big reader?
Yeah, ever since I was a kid, I read R.L. Stine's The Goosebumps faithfully as a kid. I remember reading like a kid's version of Frankenstein. Loved that. I still liked Dark and Creepy. And then I read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which is like
so good.
Yeah, like all-time favorite book. First time in 8th grade in English class. And I mean, I've taken breaks and stuff, but for the most part, like it's just always been a love of my life. So,
and you're a pretty fast reader, it seems like.
I've gotten faster. I listen to audiobooks, which helps me get through books a lot quicker. Otherwise, it would take weeks at times, which is fine. But I just love that feeling of like getting lost in a story. And so that really helps me do that. So
I'm the same. I've been an Audible member since 2006. So we're going on 15 years practically. So
that's crazy.
It's pretty...
I didn't even learn about Audible, I think, until 2018, maybe 2017.
Yeah.
I didn't realize they'd been around that long. That's crazy. I love it.
I've had, let's see how many. I have 459 titles in my library.
Oh my gosh, Rachel. Oh my gosh. And see, when I discovered Audible, how I eased into it, I think, was I had been listening to podcasts for about a year. And so I think that helped me get into audiobooks. And I started with nonfiction. So if you've never listened to an audiobook, I think starting with nonfiction could be like an easy transition into them.
Yeah, that's true. And podcasts as well. I mean, that was one of the first things that I did purchase when I started Audible was there was this show called Car Talk on NPR. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it is very formative for me in kind of deciding to dive into podcasting. And I loved these two guys. They were so funny. And that was one of the first things that I downloaded on Audible was a bunch of their books, quote unquote, but really they're episodes of their podcast, and they're so charming and funny. And I hate cars, but I loved the two of them talking about cars.
Yeah.
And so that's always been kind of a goal of mine, is to make the show funny and enjoyable and interesting so that people that have no interest in Hallmark movies would still enjoy listening to the show.
Yeah.
That's kind of my dream. I don't know if we succeed, but that's the goal.
You do really well. Yes.
We try our best. We try our best. But yeah, I love audiobooks. It definitely makes things go way faster. But I've had a harder time this last year of kind of focusing on my reading, whether it's audiobook or regular book, just because I don't know, I just feel like I always get distracted whenever I sit down to either listen or read. There's always so many things coming at me lately.
Yeah.
And I also have so many podcasts that I have to listen to both for editing purposes, but then also checking, our competition and other things. It's just hard.
Girl, you are a busy woman.
Well, that's why I wanted to start this show because I need this kind of accountability
Yeah.
with my reading. And we will talk about other books aside from romance that we're reading just briefly, but the ones we'll dive kind of the most into will be the romance novels. Because
Yes.
I am in a book club. Are
Okay.
you in a book club?
I do. I have a book club with two of my best friends that I've met online. And we meet like twice a month to just talk like bookish stuff. And then at the
Oh,
end of the
fun.
month, we will talk about the books. And we just try to have like, we pick like one word themes and kind
Mm-hmm.
of let other internet friends like pick the book that we end up picking up. So, like this month, we're reading a Babysitter's Club mystery. I've never read Babysitter's Club before. So,
Oh, none of the whole series, huh?
nothing. Yeah, I was like,
Oh.
I was a goosebump kid all the way. And so it's been a lot of fun. And I think next month it's like chick lit. So we have like
Oh, that sounds
Bridget
fun.
Jones's Diary is a pick and like two
Mm.
others. And I really want to read Bridget Jones. I've never read it. And everybody's like, it's a terrible book that didn't age well. And I'm like,
Oh.
I was like hoping it would win because I just feel like it's one of those books I should be able to say I've read. So we'll see what we end
Uh-huh.
up picking up. But yeah, book
Oh,
clubs are
that's
a lot of fun.
interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't read it for a long time. I didn't know that it didn't age well.
Yeah.
I have to check that out myself. I used to read the Jane Austen, her 5 main books. I used to read those every year, and I just don't have the time anymore, but I miss that. So I
Yeah.
think I'll have to maybe one month we'll have to make one of the Jane Austens one of the main books that we're talking about.
I
That would be
love it.
fun.
Yeah, we should.
Because I love the classics. I'm a big fan of I love Elizabeth Gaskell, North and South, and yeah, Wives and Daughters. Those are two of my favorites.
And Wives and
And
Daughters, like it's kind of sad because she passed away before she could finish
mhm,
it. So
mhm.
yeah, I have a girlfriend. She rereads Wives and Daughters every year, and I'm like, Kate,
Ugh,
that book is huge, but she loves it.
so good. It's so good. But I just pretend like the ending that they have for the miniseries is the real ending because I think they nailed it. They
Yeah.
did such a good job. I love that them in the rain,
Yeah.
and they're totally socially distanced. It's great because she's sick, and so they can't talk. They can't touch each other. But oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have a favorite?
I would
Ro-
have to say, oh my goodness. If we're talking classic, I mean, I always recommend Rebecca. Always. I just feel
Yeah,
like it's
it's so
like,
good.
I feel like it's a masterpiece. And she had another one called Frenchman's Creek that isn't like as popular, but
Uh,
I read it and I was like, this book is so dreamy. It was just so good.
yeah, yeah. I haven't read that one, but I have read Rebecca multiple times, and I agree. It's so good. And did you watch the recent adaptation?
I have not watched
Eh,
it. I have
don't don't
I
bother.
was telling everyone because it was huge on Instagram, right? Everybody was talking about, oh my gosh, Netflix is adapting Rebecca. And I'm like, but have you seen this Alfred Hitchcock adaptation though?
Yeah,
Because
that that one's good. New version, not so good.
yeah, I was like,
I don't recommend it.
before you watch this one and assume that it is the only adaptation, you have got to watch this one
Yeah,
first to have
yeah,
an opinion on it. So
agreed. So, when you are picking out books that you're profiling on your Instagram or that you're reading, how do you decide what I call it spice level that you're going to have in your books?
I really don't. I really
Yeah.
don't pick. I just kind of I'm a mood reader, and so
Uh-huh.
if I know that typically an author, like I love Debbie Macomber, for instance, a lot of her books have been adapted into Hallmark movies.
Mhm.
She is a behind closed door author. So if I know specifically, like, okay, I don't want anything steamy, I just want something really sweet and romantic, I'll I'll go to her, for example, as one of those. But if I know I want something a little bit steamy, I know the authors that typically deliver that as well. But for the most part, like spice level isn't something that I'm like, am I in the mood for this? I just kind of go with what's the summary saying? Do I feel like I'm in the mood for this in particular? And if so, that's what I pick up.
Mhm. And that I think that Amazon has a heat level that they let me see here. Let me find where they will give you some warning
Mhm.
of I'm trying to find it.
And see, that's the thing with romance, the genre, and like there's constantly discussion about the covers. So for instance, there's a series by this author Talia Hibbert, and her first book is called Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and it has this adorable cover. And so I saw it in person at Barnes and Noble one day, and they didn't have it in romance. They had it in like the regular fiction section. And I just was like, people would assume that this adorable cover is also like a really adorable story, which it is. However, it is very steamy.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, you don't really know. And there's books that you see the cover and you think, oh, this is going to be a romantic comedy. And then you get into them and you're like, I have not laughed at all. So it's hard to tell. I wish that we could get a little bit more so when you're going into a book. Because I have one of my good friends, she's not really a fan of the sexual content in books at all. So for people like her, she would like a little bit more of a heads up, but I don't know if
Yeah.
if that
So
information is available.
yeah. So we're going to try when we talk about our books, we're going to try to give some of that context of the spice level, mild, medium, or hot.
Yeah.
and,
Yes.
and that hopefully will help you out a little bit, help our listeners out a little bit. And what our plan is we are going to have a main book that we talk about in more details that might be a tiny bit spoilery, but we'll try to keep it not too bad. And then we will have a reading roundup where we go into less detail and just kind of chronicle what we've been reading.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very fun, and we hope that in the comments section that the listeners will put what they've been reading, and if they happen to have read the same books, what their thoughts are, and it'll just be really fun
Yeah, let us
because there's more to
know.
life than movies, even for film critics. So, this month we are going to be talking about Rescuing Harmony Ranch. This is by Jennie Marts, and this is for Hallmark Publishing. And the summary is Jocelyn's grandmother calls her back to the working historical ranch she runs to help her in a bind. They must make the upcoming festival a success or the ranch will go under. This means working with her ex, Mac, who is the blacksmith slash caretaker of the ranch. When Jocelyn left the big city, she broke his heart. They both feel animosity towards each other, but there's always that spark of lost love. Can it come back? Working together again may just be what they need to fall in love all over again. So, what were your overall thoughts about this book? What do you think overall?
You go first, Rachel.
I think this book is pretty basic. It's your second chance love story. You also have a lot of we're going to talk about trope time in a
Yeah.
little bit, but you have a lot of classic storytelling devices in this. You've got the girl coming back from the big city. You have a little bit enemies to lovers. You have save the ranch plot. So you have kind of a lot of basics, but nevertheless, I still enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. What about you?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I had so many thoughts, Rachel. Like, okay,
Uh-huh.
I have to say, like, I was crying at the end. Okay.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was listening to it on Audible. I had my headphones in and I'm like, don't you start crying. And the next thing I know, I'm crying. So that was a little bit unexpected when she showed up to the concert. But yeah, I was you know what? When you read this book, if you've seen any small town second chance Hallmark movie, you've
Mhm.
read this book. And that's how I felt. And at first, I just was like, I was kind of angry about it, but I was like, you know what? I've never read this author. Let's just go along for the journey and see what happens. Because, like I said, I think there's something very comforting in predictability, especially with romance novels.
Mhm.
There's something that's really comforting in knowing, especially when you've watched so many Hallmark movies and now you start reading the romance novels, kind of beat for beat what's to come. And initially I felt a little bit cheated, but then you kind of get into the story and you kind of forget about all of that. So
Yeah. So we're having some different segments on this podcast, and the first one we're talking about is trope time. And trope time is where we talk about these devices, as you said, these storytelling narrative choices, these archetypes that you see so frequently. And I'm curious. So there's second chance romances, there's enemies to lovers, there's friends to lovers. These different tropes. Do you have a favorite that you're like, yeah, this is my spot?
I actually really like Second Chance, but the more that I read, I found that I really like childhood sweethearts. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of my thing. And I mean, that's kind of how I felt with Jocelyn and Mac, but then they did actually have a relationship. So then it becomes more second chance. But I like this trope, the tropes in this book is like my thing. I love
Mm-hmm.
that. But it can also be a turnoff if I feel like they broke up for a stupid reason, or if I feel like, well, you guys do not need to be together because,
Mm-hmm.
it was a legit reason. So um, it can quickly turn into something that I don't want to read if it's not done right. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, because sometimes, especially enemies to lovers, I'm just like, this is not a good idea for a relationship.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it all turns out fun in the end, but I don't I don't picture this couple staying together very long. Yeah, I think it's not going to end well. Uh,
Really?
not this one in particular.
Oh,
I'm
if
just
it's
saying
enemies
that
to lovers.
trope in
Yeah.
general, oftentimes I'm kind of like,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I read a book earlier this year. It was in quote unquote enemies to lovers, when in actuality really what was it was the heroine being mean to the hero. I was like,
yeah,
he doesn't know that this is enemies to lovers. It gets very one-sided.
yeah, yeah. You have to keep the characters likable,
Yeah. So what's your
which can be
favorite?
very
Do you
tricky.
have a favorite trope?
I think I like second chance romances. The idea of somebody kind of carrying a flame for you is very all these years is very romantic, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, that's probably my favorite.
In this one though, and I don't want to jump ahead, but like with Jocelyn,
Uh-huh.
it bothered her so much that while she was away, he had gotten married.
Yeah,
What did you
it's
think about
true.
that? Like, what did you think about that?
Yeah, I well, and but then she acted like she didn't know anything about him or what had been happening. And I found that a little bit hard to believe, especially with how busybody and her grandma was, that she wouldn't know that he'd gotten divorced. Or, I mean, I would think that grandma would be first thing she hears about this divorce. She's going to be on the phone talking to
Telling
Jocelyn,
her.
saying,
Yeah.
"Yeah." I think so. I mean, she's such a busybody matchmaker that I can't imagine that not happening. I had a bigger problem with Mac. I felt like he was such a baby with this grudge that he held. I mean, she goes away to the city, but she was in high she
She was a
just barely out of
senior.
high
Yeah,
school,
she was
you
like a
know, like
senior.
I mean, it seemed a little ridiculous. He's a grown man now for him to be like, I'm so mad. And
Okay, okay, because I have thoughts on that, but like
yeah.
let's backtrack one. I am okay, I'm originally from a small town, so I
Uh-huh.
completely understand the small town love, but like New York City just seems to really represent
Yeah.
like you've gone off and grown up and you
Yeah.
don't have time for anything and you need to take a break from your cell phone. Like it's like if that's what you if you want to like embody a busy woman that needs to take a break, you have to set her in New York City and then send her home. And I just was
Yeah.
like I don't know. I guess I'm kind of tired of seeing that.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of the last Christmas movie that Lori Loughlin was in. I can't think of the name, with Victor Webster, and I didn't really care for it that much because Victor Webster was such a baby. He was like nursing this grudge about how could you leave and go on to be a successful designer, and like
Yeah, and with Jocelyn, it's like she, like you said, she was a senior in high school, dude. Like what I think
yeah.
he expected her to come back.
Like if you're in your 40s or late 30s and you're still kind of nursing this grudge about what happened to you when you were 18, 19, then that's problematic. Like
Yeah.
you need to move on with your life.
Well, I think that with Mac, I really got it towards the end of the book. Like, what was it? His mom, someone in his life left.
Mhm,
So Mac's internal struggle is the women that have been in his life have always chose something else. And so, like
mhm,
Jocelyn, even though she left when she was a senior, she didn't have any power over that. She still chose to stay gone. She chose to not come back. She
mhm.
chose to not, she told her grandma, "Don't say anything to me about him. I don't want to know."
Yeah.
I felt like this book did a really good job of exploring choices because, like, from the moment Jocelyn gets back, we know she's only there temporarily. And then what does she do? She runs into her long lost love. And you just automatically know it's going to come down to her having to make a decision of do I go back to my life back
Mhm.
home or do give old home a chance?
Yeah. I know. I mean, it makes me think I haven't been to my hometown for many, many, many years. Maybe there's this secret love there I've been denying my whole life. But yeah, I mean this was loaded with tropes and people think, "Oh, that's a bad thing." Tropes aren't inherently bad. They're just archetypes that we know that make the story familiar. And
Yeah.
it's all about how you execute it because there was the save the ranch, there was the planning the festival, and I found it a little bit hard to believe that this festival is really going to save everything. This is one festival.
Oh my gosh,
It's
let me not even the festival, I was like,
festival.
"Of course she's in marketing." It's
Yeah,
so convenient because there's a
it is.
festival that needs to happen, and this festival is going to determine if the ranch gets to, stay open,
Yeah.
and, like, it's just I am just ready for us to take some chance, some take a
Mhm.
chance, take some risks as
Yeah.
far as, like, give us a girl that does nothing in marketing and has to literally figure it all out, okay?
I think that we'll have to do, my I think it was called Royal Christmas Wish.
Mhm.
That was one of my favorites from Hallmark Publishing because it was different. It took in the storytelling. You thought it was just gonna be a a normal, uh a normal Hallmark royal story, but it was actually quite clever by Lizzie Shane. I interviewed her and I really enjoyed talking about it. But that's a good one that kind of takes some risks.
Yeah.
But the thing I did like about the as far as the second chance romance and the girl leaving the city uh, in this book was that he says, "I will go east with you. I will go with you." And so it's not only her just throwing away her career and being like, I liked that they added that kind of element to it.
I was happy to see that too, but it came after, like, was it her grandma? Somebody talks to him and kind of helps
Uh-huh.
him come to that decision. And I was like, I'm so happy that this came, but like, it should, if you want to be together, you should have been considering, but I guess either way, one of them was going to have to give up what
Yeah.
they've been doing, and it just, man, like I don't know. I guess
Yeah.
at the end of the
Well,
book, I was like, at any time, we as women, you may come to that point in life where you have that choice of like, do I give up
mhm.
everything that I've been doing and worked so hard for? She said something, she's like, there will always be another job, but there will never be another you. And I was like, this
Yeah.
is why these stories work so well, because sometimes you're gonna have to choose someone over that stability, that financial stability,
Yeah. That's what I like. Did you watch The Christmas Bow this last season?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked that in that movie how, they're both trying to pick w what they're going to do and should they sacrifice this career opportunity for love, but they realize that this is just a new season. They're not really sacrificing, they're just starting kind of a new adventure together, and I kind of liked how that movie did that, dynamic of sacrificing career
Yeah, I'm thinking
because you
of
start a new dream together.
Together, right. I'm
Yeah.
like, God, there was
Because
a
remember he could have gone and done the thing with his dad, the
yeah.
international work that he was going to do, and she could have gone and done all the touring, but they realized they wanted to be together, so I liked that a lot. So, it's interesting how sometimes that dynamic works out. I always joke on the podcast that you can't be a good person in the city
Yeah.
in a Hallmark movie unless you are running a parade or a window designer.
Yes.
Those the only 2 allowed
I'm
careers.
trying to think of the Christmas movie that came out last year, that the girl goes home to see her mom. The guy's like really quiet, like coffee shop owner. And that movie just captured so well that feeling of like realizing, oh my gosh, like life has really went on without me, and like
Mhm.
this is home, but like I don't really fit in anymore because life has went on, and like I started life somewhere else. And this, I felt like this book this did that really similar as well.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
Jocelyn really had to realize, like, oh my gosh, I think so. Seeing Mac with Sophie the first time and them having lunch, she just is like, oh wow, like he's with someone. And they don't even like each other like that, but just that fear of like, oh my gosh, life has really happened without me here,
Mhm.
you know?
That's the one part that maybe felt a little bit phony, the Sophie part. Like, I don't know. I mean, she's making him lunch and all this stuff. Like, she sure seemed interested, and then for her to kind of be, like, "Oh no, I'm actually not interested at all." It was,
I
uh,
like blondes.
yeah, that's right. But what did you think about the chemistry between Mac and Jocelyn?
I I f- I guess I felt it. I mean, we meet Mac within a couple of pages, and from the moment we meet him, you already know like this is the guy. So I never like didn't not feel, the chemistry between them. It just, I was really bracing myself. I've seen it enough of the movies, um and then reading the books. I'm like, it's going to come down to her having to go home, and like he's going to feel like she chooses work over him, and like she chose to leave again. And I was just kind of bracing myself for that. But I also felt like these two people really do want to be together. They're just going to have to figure out how it's going to happen.
Yes, I felt, I mean, he was kind of a baby
Yeah.
for a while. And I was just like, "Get over it." But I'm a big sucker for sort of your cowboy type guy, like strong, and that's very swoon worthy to me. And I really liked the scene where they are dancing, and I thought that that was very swoon worthy. Their first dance, I
Yeah.
actually thought I would read just a section when he says, it says, a soft breeze blew a strand of hair across her cheek, and Mac reached to brush it back and tuck it behind her ear. He gazed into her eyes, and she felt as if he were looking directly into her soul. Just dance with me. Don't think about all the other stuff. Leave the past behind us and the future ahead of us, and just be in this moment, here, now, with me. She let out a breath and relaxed in his arms. He drew her even closer and moved them around the grassy dance floor. You've gotten better at dancing, she said as she stole a glance up at him. His gaze held hers for a moment, then slowly dropped to her mouth. I've gotten better at a lot of things. So that that's a good encapsulation of this book. If you listen to that and you're like, "Ooh," then this
You
is a
should
good book
read
for you. Yeah, I
it.
think so. So that was pretty swoon worthy. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I think my swoon-worthy moment was definitely the end when, like, Chase is up on the stage and he's like, "Where's this girl at?" You know, "This guy put this romantic video clip out on, I think, Facebook or something." And
Hmm.
we're in Mac's head and he's like, "She's not here, like, she left." And then she's like, "I'm here." I was like, "Oh, now I'm crying."
Yeah, it's very good, very very good. So they get a good score when it comes to chemistry.
Yeah.
As far as spice level, this is very tame.
Yeah.
This book, you have basically one kiss at the very end and some dancing. That's about it.
Yeah.
So you're safe. Very mild,
Very
no
mild, yeah.
little to no spice. And then other comments, I thought the whole idea of the working historical ranch was kind of fun, and she did a good job of kind of making Colorado sound beautiful and make you want to kind of escape there was nice. And I also thought Graham was pretty funny.
Oh, yeah, I love yeah.
His character. Yeah. She did
Grandmothers
a
are
good job.
always fun in the books. Um, it did feel like really atmospheric, small town. It's a cozy setting. I definitely think it's worth a read. I mean, I think everybody should go pick it up. Um, it just
Yeah.
it does when you first get into it, you're like, I feel like I've read this before, and it's gonna feel like that because if you've seen one small town second chance Hallmark movie, this is that book. But it's so good. You just gotta like stick with it.
Yeah. I think you just have to be open the the storytelling devices and just enjoy something that's well executed that may not be the most original thing you've ever read in
Yeah.
your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were to give this a 1 to 5 crowns, what would you give it? It's a Hallmark book, so we can do crowns.
I I rated it a 4 star on Goodreads. I'm gonna give it a
Mhm.
four crowns.
Yeah, I gave it a 3
Okay.
on Goodreads. So, and we'll put our Goodreads in the description so you can follow us, our individual Goodreads. All right. We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies Podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/hallmarkies.
Let's dive into our reading roundup.
Do it.
And I'll do a book and then you do a book. And like I said, not all of these are romance for me, but they're just what I've been reading. So the first one was actually for my book club that I'm in. I read The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. She was pretty famous for writing Room, which of course was made into a feature film with Brie Larson that won the Oscar. And this tells the story of a woman in the 1800s that goes to investigate this girl who supposedly has not eaten for months and is being touted as this miracle child. And if you're a big plot person, this is not the book for you. She literally goes to the girl and they sit in a room, and that's about it.
I haven't read it, so I was
Not a
like,
lot going on here, plot wise, but the characters are pretty good. I liked it well enough. It's a little boring, but yeah, I gave it a I gave it 2.5 out of 5. It was okay, but I didn't. It was a little slow for me, if I'm honest. What's your first book that you want to talk about?
so the first one that I want to talk about is Pursuit of the Truth by author K.D. Richards. She's a debut Harlequin writer. Her book came out in, I believe, February, and it is a romantic suspense. So if you are like a fan of cozy mysteries or just mysteries in general, this one isn't very cozy. It is pretty intense. Um,
Mm.
I thought it was fabulous. I mean, the main character is a
Mm.
woman named Nadia. It's set in New York City, and she's being pursued by some really bad people, and she has no idea why. And it gets to the point as a reader where it's kind of terrifying because you don't know why either, and so you
Mhm.
just kind of go along with her on this journey to figure out, why are these people after me? And the hero in the book is someone that she works with. She hired him as security, and they've both had a crush on each other, but they didn't want to like cross those professional boundaries. But now that she's being pursued, he's just like, I'm gonna be by your side everywhere you go until we figure this out, basically. And that's where the romantic element comes in. So it was so good if you're into like suspense and you can like,
Mm.
you want something balanced with romance. I definitely think it's worth the read.
Oh, cool. That sounds really good. Well, my next recommendation is a book called Allergic, and it is by Megan Wagner Lloyd, who is my sister.
Okay.
Yes. Obviously, I'm very biased, but this is her first graphic novel. She's done picture books previous to this, and it's very exciting. I'm very proud of her. It's a very cute book. It's about a little girl who wants to get a puppy, but turns out she's super allergic. And this comes from my sister's real life experiences where she would get this horrible eczema growing up, and she couldn't have an animal even though she wanted to. And her experiences, I obviously give it five stars, but it's my sister. But I think it's genuinely a really charming, lovely little read that I think anybody who has kids will enjoy. But then also, if you've ever dealt with allergies or anything like that, I think you'll find it really sweet. It's she did a great
I
job.
love that. I love
Yeah.
graphic novels. I have to look that one
It,
up.
yeah, and we'll have a Amazon links to these in the description section. So if you want to follow our affiliate links, we would sure appreciate that. But what is your next book that you want to recommend
So my next one
or you want
is
to talk about?
it is Our Italian Summer by Jennifer Probst. And I read this one, I think like a month ago, actually, but it was so good. It's more of a women's fiction. It follows three women. One is like the mother, like the grandmother, and then her daughter, and then her daughter's daughter. So three generations of women who go to Italy, and the grandmother and the granddaughter have a closer relationship because the mother is a single mom, and she really, what, usually if I see that there's going to be a snotty teenager in a book, I'm like, nope, I'm not in the mood for that. But this one I really felt for the daughter, because all she wanted really was for her mom to put her work phone down and pay her some attention. And we see just the threads of their relationship during this summer vacation to Italy that they take. And it's so good. So I
Ooh.
think that'll be like a really good summer read if anyone's in the mood for, I mean, we obviously aren't traveling still. So, I mean, definitely pick it up. Good women's fiction novel. I think it's worth the read for sure.
That sounds nice and escapist.
Yeah.
Well, my next choice is actually a play, and it's called Kim's Convenience. And the popular show, which you can watch on Netflix, which I've become obsessed with in the last couple months, called Kim's Convenience, is based on this play. And I absolutely love the show. And I think that this play has most of the good features of the show. It's about a Korean family that owns a convenience store in Toronto, a Korean Canadian family, and I just love the themes of forgiveness and family, and it's very funny. The show's more outright funny than the play, but still definitely worth a read, and it only take you an hour maybe. I mean, because plays are really quick reads. So that's one nice thing about it. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
My next one was one of the first 5-star reads I gave this year, and it's another travel story. And it's called The Starcrossed Sisters of Tuscany by Lori Nelson Spielman. And this one follows a girl who belongs to this big Italian family that for generations has felt that their family has this curse. And it's like, I think the firstborn daughter will like never find true love or something like that. And so the main character in this book is that daughter. And yeah, her nona has a sister back in Italy that she does not speak with, and this sister reaches out to the hero and is like, can you come, visit and come spend the summer with me? And so her nona is like, nope, you're not going. And she's like, I'm a grown woman, like I'm gonna go. It takes a lot of thinking and convincing, and she finally does. And luckily she does, because there's a lot of familial stuff that she learns. But it's basically like this idea of a curse that this family has believed in for so long, and like how the women have shaped themselves based off of this curse, and like the relationships, the way that they've like the highs and lows and decisions that they've made as family, and how they've treated each other based off of the curse. Like, it was so good, Rachel. So again, it's another travel story. I know we're not going anywhere, so if you need a fictional trip to Tuscany, definitely pick this one up. Again, it's The
Mm,
Star-Crossed Sisters of Tuscany by Lori Nelson Spielman.
that sounds really good. My next one I was going to talk about is called Enemy by Sarah Adams, and this is total enemies to lovers trope.
I
You have
screamed when I saw this on the list, Rachel, because I have this book. I have this one and the one before it. I love Sarah
have you
Adams.
read it?
I haven't read them yet. I just hauled them. I read she had another one come out, The Off Limits Rule, and I loved it. That was
Oh,
my first by her this year. So I hauled The Enemy and the book that comes before that like a couple of weeks ago.
yeah, they make it's about these two high school kind of rivals. They didn't like each other, but they are forced to kind of work together for a mutual friend's wedding, and they make the switch to love pretty quick. I could have used even more of that like back and forth, but it was still definitely enjoyable. It's low on the spice meter, and so people it's just some kissing. That's all that you have, and it's enjoyable. It's fun if you like enemies to lovers. Obviously, by the title, you know that. But I give it a 3 out of 5.
Okay.
So.
My next one is Waking Up Married, and this is by Reese Ryan. This is part of a series by her, but you can definitely read it as a standalone. And it is another child. It's a childhood friends to lovers book between our main character Zora and her childhood best friend Dallas. She actually like saved him from some bullies on the playground as a kid, and they've been best
Ooh.
friends ever since.
Friends to lovers.
Yes. And
Yes.
like they take these trips together and he's getting an award for something in Las Vegas. And he's like, hey, I need you to come. So she's like, okay, I'm coming. And then she gets there and she lets him know, like, hey, like I have been really thinking of something. Like she's this really powerful, intelligent businesswoman. And she's like, I'm ready to become a mom. And at first he freaks out. He's like, are you like asking me to like help you with that? And
Yeah.
she's like, no, I'm just telling, she basically wants to get his blessing. And then his feelings are kind of hurt. Like, oh, so what? I'm not good enough for you to ask me. It reminded me of the movie, like The Hangover, like the first half of
Oh,
the
yeah.
book. It's hilarious. There's just decisions that are made that they don't remember making. But it ended up being very, very just romantic and like seeing how everything that you're looking for in someone is standing in front of you, but like that fear of changing the
Yeah.
dynamic between your friendship, it was so good. So yeah, that's Waking Up
Where's that one
Married.
on the spice
Um,
level?
it is definitely
A medium
it's a
spice?
medium spice. Yes, it's a medium spice.
Okay, good. All right. My next one is Manor for Sale, Baron Included by Esther Hatch. Esther Hatch is my friend. They've been sponsoring the podcast, so I guess take that with a grain of salt. But I wouldn't recommend the book if I didn't really enjoy it. And it's a Victorian novel. It's about this woman who has inherited money, so she's able to buy property, and she decides to buy this country estate so that her sister can start to recover from some ailments that she's been having. And it turns out the former owner is still living on the land in a like hunter's lodge or whatever that's on the land. So she has to deal with seeing him on a regular basis. And he has developed this whole scheme that he's going to make her fall in love with him so that he can get the land back. And that's his original idea. And of course, things 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 don't stay that cynical for long. And I thought she did a very good job with a lot of funny scenes. Like she gets this really ugly vase, and she decides, well, I need to give kind of a welcome present or whatever to the Baron because he had given her a gift. And so she brings over this very ugly face, and he's just kind of like, oh. Anyway, so there's some real funny scenes and there's some very swoon-worthy scenes, and she is great, I think, at writing kissing scenes. So if you are a fan, it's still mild heat level, but very swoon-worthy kissing. So if you like that, she's your gal.
Yay. We
It's
love
very fun. I love Regency and Victorian romance. I think it's very fun.
So my next one is I actually read it as an advanced reader copy on the website NetGalley. I
Uh-huh.
think it comes out like May 1st, but it's by Melissa Phoebos, who wrote one of my all-time favorite memoirs called Abandon Me. But this one is called Girlhood, and it's a collection of essays that just explore girlhood really and like the patterns that we form while we're experiencing things as young girls that like follow us into womanhood. And I just thought it was fascinating. Her writing is gorgeous and she's very honest and upfront about things that she has experienced and like just like finding those patterns and how things that happen to us as kids like can follow us into adulthood and like really shape the women that we become. So, I mean, I think it's like I said, I think it comes out like May 1st, I believe.
Mm.
But definitely keep your eye out looking for that if you are a fan of nonfiction, especially by women. She's an author that I love so much. And her previous book, abandoned me. I reread it all the time. It's fantastic. So that's Melissa Phoebos, and I gave that one 5 stars.
Mm. I would give Manor for Sale, by the way, 4 out of 5. I don't think I said that.
Okay.
So my last recommendation is The Memory Keeper by Jenny Hale. She was also a sponsor for the podcast,
I
and I'd
love
interviewed her,
her. Oh
and
my
I love
gosh.
her too. And this book, it starts out as a kind of a road trip story where they're stranded. She's stranded at the airport. There's no more flights leaving because of the weather, and she has been dumped by her fiance, and she's just having the worst day ever. And she randomly runs into one of her friends from growing up, and he's there at the airport. And so he and then this other lady and her end up being this kind of odd group driving to their hometown so she can be there to help her grandma. And there's also a kind of save the store element when she gets there, and he's sort of bitter and jaded by life, and so they have to kind of help each other. And he's also not he's also struggling with being there for his daughter because he lost his wife, and so he's got all this conflicted feelings. And it was very good. It really did cover a lot of ground for one book, I thought. And I liked all the characters, and overall it was entertaining. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my last one isn't just a book, it's just a series in general. I just wanted to recommend something if anyone's looking for like small town rom-com, but like something you can get cozy in. One of my favorite authors is Jill Shalvis, and literally in January I read an entire series by her called the Lucky Harbor series. My first series by her was her Heartbreaker Bay series, which sets place in San Francisco, and though it's like big city, it felt very small town. So I was really excited to read this one, and I read like all 12 books in the month of January. So yeah, like small town, I think like Pacific Northwest is where it's set. Um, but yeah, I mean, I loved every book. Like every book was like a four
Mm.
star read for me. And she straddles the line of like romance, women's fiction, and rom com in her books. So I think if you're a fan of either of those three, you can pick up any of her series and be satisfied. She's so good. So yeah,
Ooh.
especially with spring and summer here, spring here and summer coming, I think those are fantastic books to read. So
And what's the spice level on those?
I would say some of them are more just nothing less than mild, okay? But
Okay.
it is different every book. Some are a little bit steamier than others, but I mean, they're really quick scenes. You can kind of skim through them and keep reading.
Okay, good. Well, I think we give a lot of good recommendations, and I'm excited about this new series. Let us know what you think. And if you have a suggestion of what you'd like us to cover in the future, we'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'd love to hear what you've been reading. So put that in the comment section. I think that'd be a very fun discussion. And so thank you so much, Bree, for coming on and doing this.
Yeah.
And I look forward to doing it in the future. And how can people find you and your Instagram and all of that you do?
So on Instagram, I am at Falling for Romance. I actually recently started a podcast with one of my best friends. Her name is Sarah. We have one episode out right now. Right now, we're putting episodes out on Saturdays. So our second episode will be releasing very soon. But it is all about category romance. So it's called the Categorically Romance Podcast. And the link tree on my Instagram bio has everywhere where you can find me. So yeah, come find me, come chat with me about books, and I can't wait to chat with you some
Yeah.
more, Rachel. We're going to
Yeah.
hold
It's
each
gonna be
other accountable here.
That's right. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited too. And we'll have all that information in the description section. And you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And make sure you're following the podcast, the Hallmarkies Pod, Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave us your ratings and reviews. We so appreciate that. We've gotten a number of positive reviews lately, and it really helps people to find our show. So please help us out. And then if you are listening on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate that so much. We have our patron group, which is a lot of fun. We have our watch alongs that happen once a month. It's a great time. And then we also have our merch store, which has tons of fun Hallmark inspired merch. So check that out. And thanks again, Bree, and we'll talk again next month.
Thank
Bye,
you. Bye, everybody.
everyone.